Kurt, another week of PBT Extra. This time we get to talk about, guess what? Los Angeles. Of course, the Lakers. LeBron, they lost 109 to 104 in what was, it looked like a blowout. And then you turn off the TV, you turn back on the fourth quarter, and the Mavs were trailing. But they ended up winning 109 104. What were your thoughts on that? Are the Lakers out of the playoff run for you?
First off, what was nice about that game for Laker fans and the Lakers is they didn't roll over and which they did 2 nights before against the Pelicans. The game against the Pelicans was hard to watch as a basketball fan, just because they didn't respect the game. They rolled over. They didn't try. They got blown out by the Pelicans at home. At least in this game, they fought back. They made a game of it. They're not as good as the Mavericks. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed this. Last couple minutes of that game, it's still close. It's still crunch time. Luka Doncic hunted LeBron James, called out his man to set the pick, to get the switch, to get LeBron so he could go by him and score. Like, it was an impressive show from Luka. As for the Lakers, look, man, they're without Anthony Davis.
The size of it all, Kurt. The size of it all.
It's just hard. They will get better, right? But they're the 9 seed right now as we speak. They are 4.5 games back of the 8 seed Clippers with 21 to play. They're not catching the Clippers, who play with heart and play with passion. So now you've got to win 2 games to get out of the play-in for the reward of getting smacked around by the Suns, probably. Like, that's a long, hard road to even get out of the first round for the Lakers. I just don't know that this team has the outside of the matchup issues, you know, problems Westbrook creates and the matchup issues and all that in the playoffs. I just don't know if they've got, Corey, do they strike you as a team that's got the fire to do this? Just the will to do this?
It's interesting. We talk about the Lakers like a wounded animal. I keep seeing like effort and fire. Like, you know, when you read anything about Los Angeles, like where is the spirit of Los Angeles right now? I personally think the answer has been and always is, when you talk about LeBron-led Lakers team, it's Anthony Davis. It's the crazy thing about this, Kurt, is when I look at the team, do you remember before, pre-Anthony Davis? Like, remember when they didn't make the playoffs and they were in the same kind of situation pre-play-in game? Who was on that team, right? Who did LeBron play with? A lot of young players who then went on, did their own thing, started to grow up a little bit, but it didn't look good, right? And then look, Anthony Davis, when he's healthy, they win a championship. And then when Anthony Davis isn't healthy, it reverts back to this Lakers team doesn't look very good. And then now I thought, okay, well, is that just a function of Anthony Davis, you know, sans Anthony Davis or with Anthony Davis? And then you add in Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony, and you have DeAndre Jordan, who just got waived the other day, right? So you think, okay, I'm going to have all these constellation of stars like congregating in Hollywood, fit storyline, truly. And what? Still the same place they were back when they didn't make the playoffs before. So it's clearly not Russell Westbrook. It's clearly not spirit or fire or energy. To me, the answer is Anthony Davis, and can he be healthy? And at the end of the day, Kurt, we've seen this story so many times with like the early Cleveland teams with LeBron. I remember the days of old where LeBron single-handedly willed teams to like the deep in the playoffs. If you're telling me there's a chance, I don't know. That's like giving Tom Brady the ball with under 2 minutes to go. Why do it? Why do it?
I'm not sure, though, that LeBron, over the course of a regular season, and maybe it'll be different in a playoff series, but over the course of the regular season, I'm not sure he can lift a team up. I mean, you're right. He carried some Cleveland teams that had no business being in the finals, all the way to the finals, including the first time he went and they got smacked around by the Spurs. Like, those teams weren't good enough, and he carried them there. But I've seen this year that he just can't. And part of that is guys around him outside of Malik Monk not executing on a consistent basis. But I think the half step is just a little too much for them. And you're right. They need Anthony Davis back. He hasn't been consistent. But even with Anthony Davis, I'm just not sure. Their path now through the playoffs is just brutal. It's such a hard road that I'm not sure that even a LeBron-led team gets out of the first round.
And remember, though, the crazy thing is you look at his stats this season compared to last season, and he's above his
Oh
career
yeah.
average. And so it's like he's still playing at a high level, and yet they're still ninth. And that's kind of the whole thing with the Lakers. And yet, but I want to bring your attention to Dallas really quick. You talked about Luka being transcended towards the end there. What have you seen from him after such a impressive February?
Yeah, he's just really look. He started slow. I think the slow start and the criticism of that slow start, and him owning up to the fact that he didn't take his conditioning as seriously as he should have. I think that lit a fire under him. He's been fantastic. This is not a worse team without Kristaps Porzingis. With all due respect to what he can bring when he's healthy, he's another guy who's just not healthy enough. But also, what they get from Dwight Powell, what they get with some shooting from other guys, has worked out fine. So they're still in the hunt for another star. I'm not sure how far they can. Again, I'm not sure how deep they can go in the playoffs with it just being the Luka show. But he's so good. He's just so ridiculously good that they can win around. They can upset somebody because he's the guy who draws so much attention. And if other guys are just knocking down shots or making good cuts to the basket and they play enough defense, they're just a threat. They're a tough out because of him.
It's interesting. I think about Luka. There were a couple of stats that jumped out when I watched the game. One, that he over 30% of all the Mavs points he either scores or assists on. I mean, that's kind of crazy. 1/3 of everything has a hand on Luka. So when you think about that kind of input, and then you also think about he averages the most scoring in the first quarter than anyone else in the NBA. What does that tell me? It tells me that the load obviously is heavy on Luka. Right now, he's been able to carry that, but over the course of a long-term season, this is a marathon. And especially in the playoffs, where everyone else also rises and brings it to that next level. We saw in the Olympics that next level Luka is there. It's exceptional to see. We've seen it in Europe when he's playing there. It's next level Luka. It's exceptional. But it's interesting is, can Jalen Brunson hit that next level? Can Finney Smith hit that next level? So that to me is where I'm looking at Luka. I know Luka can ball. Like it's just. It is what it is, right? Can he, as a 23-year-old, how long will it take for him to help elevate everyone else around him to that level of saying, I don't need to get going right away. I can score 15 in a quarter whenever, like I'm Luka Doncic. I want to make sure you're feeling good in the first 2 or 3 quarters. So in the third quarter, when LeBron goes off, because LeBron can score at will, that's the difference right now between Luka and LeBron. And honestly, that's like the only comp you can give for Luka, right? Like, I mean, being that big, that skilled, and such a great passer and scorer, it's LeBron. So I think he can learn from LeBron in that instance. Is, hey, Luka, make all those points, and instead of the first quarter, in the third quarter, make sure all your guys are going early, and I think you'll see a much more efficient and competitive Mavs team in the playoffs. But we're not there yet. He's 23 years old. That's the next evolution.
What's funny is that you were describing that, and that was part of LeBron James's arc. That was part of Michael Jordan's arc, right? It took, how long did it take Jordan, and how many times did he have to get kicked in the head by the Pistons before he learned about really elevating the guys around him and making that a Bulls team whole, right? With Pippen, with Rodman, with everybody that was there over the course of that, Horace Grant in those early days. It took a while for Jordan to get there and not just dominate the game. And I think that maturation, that level of maturation, is happening with Luka. And I think you're right. I think that's the next step for him is understanding that. And then with that, which ones of those guys can step up in the playoffs and be that guy with him, right? Like not everybody handles that pressure and getting that, not everybody's Steve Kerr when he gets passed to by Jordan in the playoffs, knock down that shot, right? Or Paxson or something. There's plenty of guys who don't want that ball. So is Jalen Brunson that guy? Finney Smith, Hardaway, like all on down the list. Like who there can handle it?
Now let's move on to Utah. This is an interesting, still on the West Coast, Lakers to Utah, but Utah's won 8 out of the last 9. They're sitting in the 4th spot right now in the Western Conference. What are your hopes right now going into the most critical element of the season?
I know everybody's once bitten, twice shy with them, right? Like you want to believe in them, and then they just haven't come through in the playoffs. And last year that was injuries, right? No Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell basically on one leg, and they still did fairly well. If this team is healthy, even without Joe Ingles, who's obviously gone and now traded, this team is capable. To me, there's like a step below where the Suns are with Chris Paul back, where the Warriors can be once they get Draymond back. I mean, obviously they've just not been the same team without Draymond, but when they're fully healthy, I think those two teams are at another level. I think everything's kind of got to go right for Utah, but it's not that big a gap. Like, I really think that they are fully capable of putting together that kind of run because they have gotten better at doing different things. Like, part of it was you could attack them by going small. They didn't switch. Well, they switch a lot more or less. In fact, they beat Dallas the other day because Rudy switched on to Luka at the end of the game a few times and then held his own. That switching defense, the ability, because Mike Conley is there and can run pick and roll with Gobert, they get a lot of system points in the regular season that go away in the playoffs when teams lock in on them and watch the film. But I think they're capable. To me, this is a deep, smart team who knows who it is. I'm just not. Look, I am a little gun shy. All right, what about you? I mean, do you trust them going forward?
When you think about who's the best team in the Western Conference, it's not the Jazz at the current moment. But with that said, you have to put that out there. But with that said, though, I think there is an opportunity for Donovan Mitchell to cement himself as like a superstar, right? You think about, I think the bubble was a critical moment where I saw, okay, wow, Donovan Mitchell's coming into his own, right? This is a moment that we're witnessing. I thought Jamal Murray was right there too. Clearly, Donovan Mitchell's continued to keep going, and I don't know if he's there yet where he's reached the Devin Booker state level. We saw Trae Young kind of break through last year. So this is Donovan Mitchell's moment. He can break through. He can lead his team to a final because we know they're a good team. And that's, you think about different, you mentioned arcs. You think about different arcs of someone's career. The first part is, are you winning games? So losing to winning season. And then you think, okay, can we get into the playoffs? Okay, check. Now, are we a competitive are we a competitive team? The Utah Jazz is one of the best teams in the league. You have sitting atop of that Western Conference for a while. Now it's okay. Now you have that. Check. Now, what do we do in the playoffs? If people aren't worried about you in the regular season, then they focus on playoffs. And that's kind of where Donovan Mitchell is right now. So they're hovering at 4. And to me, it's more like, okay, will he step up to this challenge? You know what Rudy's going to give you. He's consistent. He's one of the most consistent players in the NBA. And he's consistently excellent, right, at what he does. Now, the question is, and Jordan Clarkson's going to give you. He's consistently excellent. You know what Quinn Snyder's going to give you. Everyone on that team knows what they're doing. Now, the question is, can Donovan Mitchell take them to the promised land, to the next level? And I think that's on Donovan. So that's what I'm excited for. And I can't predict that, but I know it's coming. There's something in San Antonio we call pounding the rock, where you keep hitting it, and you're like, okay, I've been hitting this rock for 1,000 times and there's nothing here. There's like a scratch. And then at the 1,001 time or whatever, it shatters. That's Utah. When is it going to shatter? Is it this season? Is it next season? Who knows?
I just think there's a lot of pressure on them too. Remember, new ownership in Ryan Smith, who brings in Danny Ainge on top of everything else, the existing front office power structure there. Danny Ainge isn't the most patient of man, Corey. If this doesn't work in this postseason for whatever reason, there's a sense around the league that changes would be coming, that they would decide to be more aggressive in rebuilding this team around Donovan or whatever they're going to do. But changes would come if it doesn't work. So there's that pressure kind of hanging over him too.
Which is interesting because, once again, it was one of the best built teams in the league like last year. So it's how much more, how much better can you get by doing a rebuild? It's not like it's, so anyways, moving on to another player who has come into that superstar mold pretty well this season. His name is Ja Morant. So do you think he considers MVP conversation?
Yeah, he's in the conversation. Yeah, absolutely. He's been so, A, the team is there. B, he has been the best player on that team. He's dropping 50, sets a career high with 46 or 48 one night, then comes back the next game and drops 52. That dunk over poor Jakob Poeltl, who is such a good defender and has played so well this year. And everybody's going to see him because he just got dunked on. But then he makes that ridiculous buzzer beater 2 minutes later. He's just so fun and so entertaining. But he's winning. He's giving them points. He's in the conversation. I'll tell you quickly. Right now, I would say Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic are the top three in whatever order you want to put them in. And then it's kind of an interesting, like Ja's in the mix, Stephen Curry, DeMar DeRozan. I would have put Chris Paul there, but I think him missing the rest of the season with the fractured thumb kind of drops him. It's a real fight for those last couple of spots. I'm probably forgetting somebody off the top of my head, but there's a few guys kind of battling for those other spots to get in that top five. I think there's three guys that are kind of locks in the top five. But I'm not sure if Ja gets all the way to the top or if he just, I mean, in your third year, if you're finishing fourth or fifth in the balloting, you're all NBA at that point. You're doing okay.
Yeah, his career trajectory is spot on. It's exactly what you want. And the crazy thing is, we believe that this would happen all the time in the draft, that there's going to be all these guys like Ja in the first round. There's not. There's like one Ja. Like every year or so, you only get a few of those guys. So let's just cherish that. Also, the thing about Ja that I think is amazing is he's one of the best rebounding guards that I've seen. Like the guy, 52 points, 7 rebounds. It's a thing that. How are you dropping 50 plus points and also having that effort, the way that he attacks the game, just as far as effort on every level, is amazing. And no wonder he's coming into his own so quickly.
And his tops might be a little better than yours.
No, 100%. He can jump out of the gym. I don't even want to try to jump against him. I want to bring it to Miami. Let's go check out the Heat. They're playing very well. It's interesting because they still don't have Oladipo. He only played 4 games for them last season before injury. We thought he'd come back in February. Now we're into March. What are you hearing?
Not much. It's kind of quiet. I think he might come back and get some limited minutes. At this point, I don't think he's going to break into their rotation and play a big role for them down the stretch. But if this is a team loaded with versatile wings and a coach who knows how to use them, and if they can get somebody who can give them solid spot playoff minutes on the wing off the bench in a matchup that they like, then that's great. I mean, they're already bringing Tyler Hero off the bench, and he's probably the 6th man of the year. If you can slot another, again, guy who can shoot the three, who can defend a little bit and do all that in there, that's great. I don't know. It's been pretty quiet on that front. You're not hearing a lot of countdown with him like you are with other stars who are out right now. So we'll see. But I don't, with all due respect to how good he is, do they need him?
And that's kind of the crazy. Yeah, that's a crazy question. I mean, do you think they need him? They're already number one.
Yeah, I always thought not only it's the number one that surprises me in this sense. We've talked about this before. I think they're better built for the postseason. I think the way that they match up with Bam Adebayo, who can guard 4s and 5s and get out and run and step out, and Jimmy Butler, who competes every night in the postseason really hard and can lead a team. Now you got Kyle Lowry, who's got a ring, who knows what it takes, who can get you some buckets. You've got shooters everywhere in Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero and on down Max Strus and on down the list. Everybody, a whole team that can shoot. That versatility lets arguably the best coach in the game, one of the best coaches in the game, mix and match his players in each matchup. I think that they are a legitimate threat to come out of the East. I think that they are that good. They've got some tests coming up, but I to me, matchup wise, versatility wise, and by the way, best point differential in the East. Like they have statistically the best team. There's nothing not to like there.
Yeah, they have stability as well as far as just alignment, coach. I mean, so yeah, it's a pretty amazing situation. You think about how just a couple years ago being in the finals and then going through that dip. That huge, I mean, all of us, you and I were just saying, wow, Kyle Lowry acquisition. I was like, what a move. That was the move. Like, that was it. And I know everyone went to LA. They were like, oh, look at all those stars. But we were like, Kyle Lowry going to Miami. This is pretty exciting. And then Oladipo, that's always kind of been an interesting kind of question mark, just because we haven't really seen a healthy Oladipo for a long time. I wonder what that would look like. But I think you're onto something where if you're already playing number one, that's a really good position to be in as a team. I think Denver, on the other hand, is in a different scenario because you have, okay, well, what you got with Jokic, but like Michael Porter Jr., can he stay healthy? Like there are questions around like injuries there, and like with Porter Jr., with Murray and everybody, like that's a crazy good team, right? But like it's funny because you think about with like the Heat are really crazy good. What else could Oladipo add? Yeah. And that's just gravy on top.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting when you think about that. And they're not too far removed from that finals berth. You learn from that. Bam, won gold over the summer. He has the loss in the finals to kind of like understand and steal him as a player. He understands what it takes now to go over the hump. I mean, this is an interesting question.
Yeah, to me that what makes them so dangerous in the East is whether they. By the way, they could very well get Brooklyn in the first round, which would be a whole different discussion. But their versatility lets them match up. Hey, it's tough to match up with Boston, who brings in two elite wings in Brown and Tatum, but they've kind of got the guys who can do that. Or if you want to go bigger against Joel Embiid, well, they've got guys who can do that and space the floor and cause problems. Like, I think their versatility and toughness and physicality lets them kind of match up against anyone and go after weaknesses. At some point in the playoffs, sometimes it becomes less about how good your top end players are, how good your peak is, and how few weaknesses you have. Where can I attack you? Where can't I attack you? Miami just doesn't really have weaknesses to attack, and that makes them really a tough out.
Yeah, so quick picks: Miami versus Milwaukee, and then Miami versus Brooklyn. Who you taking?
Miami versus Milwaukee is interesting, right? Like, that's such a fun matchup the last couple of playoffs. My question is, which Bucks team? Like, the Bucks just haven't. They're basically, if they're 13-12 since the turn of the since the calendar turned to 2022, with an average defense. Like, I keep expecting them to just start flowing. They better do it. They've got a couple tough games coming up too. I think this is a litmus test. Like, hey, if you're going to flip the switch, now's about the time you want to be flipping that switch, right? 20 games to go, get it kind of rolling into the playoffs. So I think that's a big matchup, but I kind of like Miami again because I just think they're playing at a higher level. And then against Brooklyn, a whole Brooklyn team would be different. If Kevin Durant's back, it gets interesting. But I'm going to take Miami. I think Miami's for real. I think they can sweep these two games.
Yeah, I agree. So now let's move on to the last part of our show, PBT picks, one of my favorites of all time. Now let's kind of dissect. A lot has happened since we had PBT. One of the things that happened, Ben Simmons got traded, and so did James Harden. So now we see them swap Harden and Embiid. And I don't want to forget about Harris now. Tobias Harris in Philadelphia as well. Do you like that, or do you like Kyrie, Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons? Who won?
I kept saying like when I was asked about this before, a lot of times I was saying Brooklyn, and I still believe Brooklyn wins long term in this because they got a lot younger. But we'll see when Ben Simmons is back. I also think Kevin Durant can teach him to handle pressure. I think the question is will Ben Simmons accept a Draymond light role? Will he lock people down on defense and on offense be willing to I'm not taking the ball out of Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving's hands on offense. Those are unbelievable shot creators. Will he be a guy willing to set a pick for one of them, slide off, get the ball back at the free throw line at the nail, and then, hey, he can find shooters. He's such a good passer and playmaker. He can find shooters in the corners. He can take a step in and throw a lob to a guy coming out of the dunker spot. He can take it to the rim himself if he's confident about hitting free throws. I think his confidence has got to be built up. Long term, I think that's a great move. This season, maybe next season, if you watch James Harden and Joel Embiid for 2 games, I really, and Tyrese Maxey kind of almost is their third wheel. He's been phenomenal for them. That clicked a lot faster than I thought. And I'm a little higher on Philadelphia now than I was the day of the trade because, shockingly, James Harden is in great shape and all energized and doesn't look sore at all after being traded.
I've seen this movie before. So I don't know. I don't know if any team won, to be completely honest with you. I look at this and I'm confused. I don't know. I think it's kind of like, in this scenario, if I had to pick a team that I feel more comfortable with, I mean, I really, honestly, I think it's a wash. I think it's a draw. I think it's a gentleman's draw, to be completely honest with you. And that is very concerning to me. And I think that should be concerning to Philadelphia fans and to Brooklyn fans. The fact that you just gave up James Harden and you might walk away even. Or like the fact that, Philadelphia got James Harden and might walk away even. Once again, that's problematic. That goes beyond like one for one. Like, this is just like systemic questions that I have. So all in all, Kurt, I think it's a wash.
I think one thing with Philadelphia, as much as even if you like this trade for them, it shortens the window, doesn't it? Like James Harden's 32. Let's be honest, been burning the candle at both ends for a while. Has looked older in recent years. And Embiid has an injury history. I'm concerned that their window is much shorter. Where I almost feel like Brooklyn extended theirs, but I don't know if they can reach that. I don't know if they can reach that potential, or if either of them can really.
Well, I mean, Ben Simmons did just force his way out of one place on a max contract. So my point is that you could have argued that Philadelphia was younger too, So my point is that, like, in today's NBA, it doesn't. I don't think that's a valid argument, which is crazy. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's why the more I look into this, I'm thinking, did someone win? And once again, to me, that's concerning. If I'm a Miami fan, I think they won. I think Miami won. I think Milwaukee won. I think other teams in the East won here. I don't know if Brooklyn or Philadelphia won.
Yeah, I love that trade for both of them. I think it can work for them. Even if it works out for them, I probably still think it's Milwaukee and Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Which is wild. It's wild, Kurt.